season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 63 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name's Kyle Sutherland. We'll be joined by the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn, here in just a split second. But it is spring break, and while many of us are going to be catching our breath, hopefully I will a little bit this week. I know that we all need that at times, but some of us are going to have the week, or some of the teams are going to have the week off, but there will be some tournaments, especially out-of-state ones, that some of our teams will be representing the natural state in, and we'll talk about those. We've also got a lot of tournaments from this past weekend to talk about. We'll talk about some of the top highlights from the previous week as well as those tournaments. So looking forward to that. I want to remind everybody before we get started, if you have not already, make sure you're subscribed, whether that is on YouTube if you prefer to watch. If you do subscribe on YouTube, make sure you hit that notification bell so you are notified anytime we release an episode. Also Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, we are there. We'll now bring in the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn. Jared, you got the Rich Mountain attire on this week. Shout out Tracy Neely, doing a great job with that program, has done a great job with that program there. We're going out to West Arkansas. See, the first time on the preview pod, you had the National Park Nighthawks. Then last week you did the Ouachita Baptist Tigers, and this week it's the Rich Mountain Bucks.
Yeah, I didn't get a hold of Coach Neely in time to get me a Rich Mountain shirt, but I had the hat. He hooked me up a couple years ago on that, so I'm gonna have to hit him up and get me a shirt too at some point. But definitely, Coach Neely has always been a good friend, a good guy, and a great coach. And he comes to all of our showcases, and he definitely recruits hard, and he really cares about girls. And it's always been fun to watch him interact with the girls at the showcases and stuff. He just does a great job on the recruiting trail, and so do his assistant coaches. They attend a ton of our stuff, and so it was a good chance to rep them. And I've reached out to about 5 or 6 of the other college coaches to start getting some gear to get ready for the upcoming week. So hopefully I'll have about 7 or 8 more schools that I can rep over the next few podcasts.
Yeah, if you want to sit, well, even if it's just to Jared or to both of us, we'll always take college attire and we'll wear it on here. I think I've worn these fishing hoodies for the last year on just about every, because I wear these every day. They're just so freaking comfortable. But I will definitely wear some college gear. We'll rep that for sure and support the kids around the state. Yeah, Coach Neely, I never got a chance to cover him when I think he was at Horatio and then won a state championship at DeQueen, if I'm not mistaken. That was actually before I had gotten into media in Arkansas. I had started a little bit independently in Texas, and before he got to Rich Mountain, that was when I was still living in Texas, so I didn't get to do that, but he has done a great job there. And so before we get into, as I mentioned, we're going to recap mostly. We'll talk about some of the highlights. Jared and I will finish the show by talking about some of our takeaways from the first half of this season. Just move my screen down a little bit here. We'll talk a little bit about from the takeaways that he and I have, maybe 1 or 2 from each classification at the end here, but mainly we're going to discuss some of the things that happened over the weekend. We had multiple tournaments that happened, so we're going to talk about some of those winners that won their divisions. Also, we had a really big round robin at the Farmington tournament at Farmington, Randy Osnes Field, so we're going to get into that. Before we do, I do want to give some love to the people who make this show possible. First off, Athletic Field Service of Arkansas out of Sherwood, whether it be infield renovation, lip removal and edging, anything on a natural surface, Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. So give them a call at 501-416-1218 for your free evaluation and consultation. Again, that's 501-416-1218 for your free evaluation and consultation. Jeremy Rice and his crew will hook you up. Also, Boom Boom Floor Shine. You'll see that in the bottom left corner for those that are watching. You need some, if your VCT tiles need some TLC, make sure and give Boom Boom Floor Shine a call. They service all of the Southwest Arkansas area. 870-833-0521. Again, that's 870-833-0521. And of course, can't forget our friends at Chinook Seedery. If you love our seeds, they have flavors, a variety. And my personal favorite is the, I would say actually right now, maybe it's barbecue. Love the jalapeno, love the lemon pepper, but they're all very good. Go try them today. NSS Media on their website, your referral code for 10% off of your order, not just your first order, any order. So that, again, 8 flavors there. That is the preferred seed of USA baseball, as well as D1 baseball and D1 softball. So now let's get into the reason why you are all here today. Let me make sure I got my camera angle switched up here. So the first thing that we'll get into is not the Farmington tournament yet. Going to get into the Blazer Blast, which shout out to our great friend Karen Sanders, who has been putting this on for, I think, now 14 years. Coach Sanders, of course, is the head coach at Valley View. When she was at Nettleton, I believe it was the Raider Blast at that time. Then she went to Brooklyn. It was the Bearcat Blast. And then now in her second year with Valley View, it's the Blazer Blast. 40 teams from Arkansas, Missouri, and Tennessee attended this event. Last year, Jared, I felt so bad for Karen, like Sanders last year, because this was, if you remember, a tournament basically all rained out. They did get a few teams in, but they were getting helicopters, the different things, trying to drop the field out. It was just I don't want to say it was a disaster, but it was just really unfortunate that Mother Nature, was able to destroy it essentially in the way that it did. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh there, but there were a lot of things that went down. And this year, everything pretty much the plan from what I gathered. So it was really great to see this great event that's gone on for nearly 2 decades succeed a lot more, again, with nicer weather than we saw last year. So just looking at the winners here, of course, the green bracket Woodlawn took down Mayflower with Star City getting 3rd place. The red division, Whitehall beat Quitman with North Little Rock getting 3rd. Gold, I think TCA is Trinity Christian. They're obviously an out-of-state school. I can't remember the exact name of it, so I apologize about that. They took down Huntsville, and then Greenland got 3rd. The white division, East Poinsett County took down Wynn with Millington Central, I believe is out of Tennessee, got 3rd in the white division. Then last but not least, the orange division, Manila took down Obion, who is again out of Missouri, I believe, their JV team, and then Cross County got 3rd. So we'll start on that green division, Jared. This is just, this was a loaded bracket, and you look at the 3 teams there, and it makes sense. I mean, look, green and red, I would say were the most competitive in that entire tournament. But Woodlawn, what a performance that they had. Of course, Lily Faye McWhorter, I know that she's obviously had an incredible career overall as a Lady Bear, but this was one of her better weekends, especially when you consider the lineups that she faced. In a 2-0 victory, 5 innings pitched, 2 hits allowed, 12 strikeouts, then pitched again in the finale or the championship round against Mayflower. Again, another super loaded lineup that the Lady Eagles have. 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, and then 17 strikeouts. So big time outing there from Lily Faye. But Jared, I'll go ahead and say, and I'll let you since I've been kind of rambling here, I'll let you go into a little bit more details about this Woodlawn team. But they have really made some noise. We knew that Woodlawn coming into the season would be on the back end of the Super 7 and probably stay there. But they played just about more games than anybody in the state, regardless of classification, and they fared well against a really tough schedule. You look at I look first and foremost once you get past Lily Faye at her battery mate Macy Harrison, the senior. Jared, she took over for a 3-year start, actually a 4-year starter, Megan Fitzgibbon at catcher, and Macy has done really, really well, batting .380. She's got 17 RBI on the year. I know Lily White has also made some noise for them, Kendall Toke, and then also Lacey Rawls has really pitched well for them. So she pitched well in the semifinal round against Bauxite. So Lily Faye McWhorter is being Lily Faye McWhorter. We know what kind of player she is. She signed with the Razorbacks, but this Lady Bears team has maybe been the one that has surpassed expectations the most in 2A up to this point.
I got to their new coach down there, and I believe you pronounce his name Matt Hewitt. Hopefully I got that right. But I had a really good conversation with him. I actually got to talk to him earlier today, and had done a little research on Woodlawn because they had such a good performance. And man, he raved, and several parents I know from down there have raved about how well Lily White's hitting the ball, and that Kendall Took's hitting the ball. She's just crushing it. She's batting almost 600. But everything that I hear over and over is how well Macy Harrison's doing. That she's just been a wall back there, and done a great job, to come in and take over as a catcher and be able to give them a chance to compete and throw all the different pitchers. And Lacey Rawls has just been lights out as a number 2 behind Lily Faye. Just looking at her numbers and what she's doing, and really, honestly, Lacey Rawls is probably a strong number 1 anywhere else.
Agreed.
Behind Lily Faye, and for them to have that kind of depth, and then you go on down to Carson Chastain. That's another pitcher that would be at number 1 at almost any other school. That's just a really strong pitcher. It gives them a third. And I think Carson's got a little banged up, and she may miss a game or 2, but she'll be back soon. But they have a lot of depth in the circle. They've had a lot of kids that have stepped up that they didn't really know what they were going to have to start the year. And I'm close with a handful of parents down there and kind of have an ideal coming in the season. They weren't really sure what they were going to have because they had lost some really good players. And I think the new coach has done a great job. Coach Hewitt has done a great job, and they've worked hard. And that's one thing he talked about is they really hit the weight room in the fall, and they really have just practiced a lot to build fundamentals. And it gave them a chance to build some chemistry and get those new kids in there and work together. So Woodlawn has just been on a tear here lately and looking really great. You have that kind of depth, and they're hitting the ball well and playing pretty solid defense. So they have definitely overachieved from what the preseason expectations were, and it wouldn't surprise me for them to continue this going forward.
And Mayflower, we see there that Woodlawn defeated the Lady Eagles 1-0 in the championship round of the Green Division. Mayflower had a good showing as well. I know Kylie Branscombe pitched really well and batted over 500. That's just one off the top of my head. Alyssa Hagens is another one that's really good for them. Ruby Otts. It's some of the same names that we've talked about for so many years. Tori Barksdale, Michael Duvall. Also for the Red Division, when you look at Whitehall has been the 5A team that has probably made the most noise up to this point for me. Now, the thing is they have beaten quite a few teams in lower classifications than, but it is quality lower classification teams, i.e. Quitman, who Emma Finley has done. We talked about her last week. She's done a great job taking over for Chloe, has kind of been their number 1 for Quitman and taking over for All-State pitcher Chloe Lyles. I know Dakota Rhodes had a really big weekend. There's some other ones I didn't know. I did forget to note some of the Lady Bulldogs, but I do know that there were multiple girls for them that had like 2 and 3 hits in multiple games. So their lineup is playing really well. And we knew Quitman was going to be really good, but it seems like that they have put it together maybe a little bit quicker than they have in previous seasons. But I look at Taylor Irvin had a massive week, 6 for 10 in 3 games for the Lady Bulldogs, also 4 runs, a couple, I think actually had 1 or 2 doubles and then 2 triples, 6 RBI and a home run. Then Bethany Roper in the semifinal round over Des Arc in an 8-0 victory, 5 innings pitched. Of course, Bethany is committed to play for Louisiana Tech. 5 innings pitched, just gave up a hit, 0 walks and 8 strikeouts. So I think, and we'll talk a little bit more, Jared, about I did, and I also mentioned from the white division as well, EPC. I just put all 3 of these girls because I only got results from 2 of actually it was the championship round against Wynn and then their first round matchup against Palestine Wheatley. So I kind of got some mixed numbers on them. So I just wanted to make sure, because I know that all 3 of these girls, Kelly Ashcraft, Riley Ashcraft, they're twin sisters. I know they're sisters. I believe they're twins. Kelly Lucas and Mercedes Real, I saw all had multi-hit games, and I believe 2 of those games. And then also Kylie Henderson, their pitcher. We're going to talk a little bit more about EPC once we get to our roundtable discussion at the end. But she's playing really well as a sophomore, has made a big jump from her freshman to sophomore year. So, again, this was really big, I think, for especially EP and also Manila. They are another Arkansas team that won their division in the orange. So 4 of the 5 divisions were Arkansas teams that won, and 3 of the 5 were all Arkansas finals. So you love to see that a lot. That was really cool. So again, big shout out to Karen Sanders. I know that again, last year, after everything that had happened that was completely out of any human being's control, they were ready to get this thing rolling again, and really excited for them that they were able to put on such a great event for the 14th year in a row. Also, now let's go to or did you have anything else to say about that, or I was going to move on?
I would just touch real quickly. I've seen Mercedes reel quite a bit in the past in travel ball, and that kid, she is one you don't want to have to pitch to her. She has got a great eye for the ball and can absolutely knock the cover off of it. So it doesn't surprise me to see her up there as one of their top performers.
Yeah, she's been a 4-year starter for them at center field. And Jared, I don't know if you pay attention to many other the EPC sports, but their boys just won the second consecutive state championship in 2A. And there are 3 reels. There was Ashton, Doug, and Tyrus. Tyrus actually got, now I don't know if they're all brother. I would imagine there's probably, a cousin in there if I had to guess, but there's always a reel or a gains on these EPC teams, it seems like every time. But yeah, reel is a very popular name on multiple of these EPC teams: football, softball, basketball, probably even baseball. And they do a great job. Just a very, very, I'm going to assume mostly family members in there, but they all do a great job for the Warriors and the Lady Warriors. Also, the Ozarks, I think it's actually the Ozarks plural Classic. I've seen both of them, but nonetheless, Bentonville just wrecked shop in this tournament. Between Warsaw, Missouri, Brooklyn, and Rogers Heritage, the Lady Tigers outscored their opponents 28-0. It was 4-0 against Warsaw, and then 12-0 each against Brooklyn and Rogers Heritage. And Jared, I think that looking at the slate for this tournament, there were some good teams in here. Tuckerman, Brooklyn. Of course, Brooklyn is missing one of their top players, Amaya Curry, that's playing with the U15 national women's team right now and doing a great job. Had a home run on Saturday. But you look at this bracket and you had a feeling that Bentonville was the heavy favorite in this, because look, they're the number 1 team in 6A. I think to me, it's hard to argue that they're not the top team overall in the entire state. But Coach Early really just wanted to go to this tournament, keep some consistency going into spring break, and he got that. Darby Burnett pitched probably her best, I would say her best game as a Tiger, and 5 innings pitched. Of course, this one went. And something I did forget to mention, guys, we're not – we do take a lot out of these tournaments. I should have mentioned this at the top of the show. I apologize. I waited till now. But a lot of these games did it, whether it would be because of lopsided scores, whether it be because of time limits. A lot of these games in multiple of these tournaments that we're going to be discussing did not go the full 7 innings. So that's something to definitely take into account. Now, in some games, that doesn't matter because, again, it might be lopsided. But that's something to take into account here. We do find out a lot of things in these tournaments, but there's also some things that we don't, because especially in the tight ones, like the 1-0, the 2-0, they might only go 5 or 6 innings just because of time limits. So definitely want to make sure I throw that in there. But in the 4-0 win over Warsaw, 5 innings, gave up 1 hit, walked 0, and then struck out 14, did Darby Burnett. Again, probably her best game as a Lady Tiger at this point. Marissa Gianeschi had a great weekend as well, 2 home runs, including a grand slam against Rogers Heritage, obviously a team that Bentonville is very familiar with. And here's the craziest stat, Jared. I don't know that I've seen this, or at least not in a long time. So they're 1 through 4 with Kylie Wyman, Demi Donahoe, Violet Nguyen, and Aniston Wright, who, of course, Aniston came in from Springdale Harbor. Now she was committed to South Alabama, now is, I believe, signed with Drake, if I'm not mistaken. 7 of 10 against Brooklyn, 10 of 10 against Rogers Heritage. So 17 of 20 in the semifinal round and the championship round for this Bentonville Lady Tiger squad. Really not much more you could have asked from these girls. I mean, it was just about a perfect weekend for them. Didn't allow a single run. And again, you expected them to really handle business, but 17 of 20 from your top 4 in your lineup, plus the rest that you have in that 1 through 9. I know Coach Early feels pretty good about what he's got on this 2025 squad thus far.
Well, if you can go 17 of 20 with your top 4 and you pitch well like Darby Burnett did, you can expect to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's a group of young ladies that know how to hit the ball. And obviously we've known for a long time that all of those girls are pretty decent ball players and can hit the ball. But I was really impressed with the way that Darby Burnett threw the ball, especially in that game. Playing at that level against schools that size, it's pretty impressive when you can throw up 14 Ks, playing at a high level like that. So Definitely, I'm blown away by that stat. 17 of 20 though from the top 4 in 2 games.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Yeah, and Warsaw, I talked to Coach. I was actually texting Coach early the whole weekend, kind of getting the vibe on some of these because, like we've seen Heritage, or we haven't seen them. We've followed Heritage. We've obviously followed Brooklyn, but he said Warsaw's pitcher was pretty good. The Warsaw pitcher, I didn't get her name, but she actually plays with the KC Peppers, which a lot of Bentonville girls do. I think Demi Donahoe, Aniston Wright, a few of them do, and Steph Crittenden from Bentonville West plays for the Peppers. Casey Wood, who's now playing for the Razorbacks, did. Sarah Watson, their former catcher at Bentonville. So a lot of NWA connections up there. And then the Warsaw connection with the pitcher. He was very impressed with her. And of course, I think it was 0-0 game until about the 3rd or 4th inning, if I'm not mistaken. And then Bentonville scored the 4. And then I believe the time limit ended up expiring that one. But I will say, Jared, in this one, Brooklyn, Brooklyn's taken some on the chin lately. But I think that's, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this when we get to the 4A roundtable, but I think that's a team that's going to be just fine. I was talking to a few from Brooklyn over the weekend, and that was kind of what I was telling them is, other than maybe 1 or 2 4A, I can't remember if Gravett or one of the other Gentry. I think Gentry plays Bentonville in April. But really, other than some of those nearby schools that might get a look at them, nobody's going to get the kind of look that Bentonville or that Brooklyn got from Bentonville the other day. Nobody in 4A will, because again, to me, Bentonville's the best team in the state. I thought coming into the year, they were the best team in the state overall. We see again, just from their 1 through 4 alone, going 17 of 20. So I will say this to Brooklyn fans, and we'll probably repeat this that's a team that is going to be fine. I think when it's all said and done, we said before the season that this is really a healthy mix of seniors and youngsters, especially freshmen, that they have in their lineup right now. Madison Wooldridge and Ashley McNeese were 2 very big pieces that you lost in particular. So I think that, again, it was not the most fun week in the world for Brooklyn, but I think that this is the type of stuff that when you look back at it and you're making those push for a playoff push, you're making a push for a top playoff seed at the end of April, beginning of May, this is the type of weekend that you're going to look at and realize that maybe you got exposed a little bit, but it really helped you learn at the same time.
I'm going to be interested to see what Brooklyn does when they get back in their conference playing against competition at their level. Especially, I know they were missing at least 1 or 2 players this weekend.
Yeah.
I think someone told me that they were missing 2 starters. One, I believe, was gone playing for like Team USA 15U or something.
Yeah, and that's Amaya Curry. Yeah,
Amaya Curry, and then someone told me that they had 1 other starter sick, and I don't know if that. I'd have to confirm that. But if you're missing a couple starters and then you're playing teams like Bentonville, that'll let you find out about what you're made of real quick. And that's the time for them to grow up in the game and get better. And I guarantee you come back after spring break and start watching them in their conference and their level competition. Brooklyn's going to be a really good team, and we're going to talk about them quite a bit down the stretch.
Talking about some really good teams that was featured in the Farmington tournament over the weekend. Now, the Farmington tournament was a little bit different. It was more of a Farmington round robin this year. Last year, there were 8 teams, including now there were 7 varsity teams, and then you had the Farmington JV in there. But this season, it was just 6, so they just did a round robin. They did 3 games on Friday and then 6 games on Saturday. Some of the ones that were notable for me was so the first game that opened it up, Farmington 5-3 over Gravett, and also the nightcap, Benton 6-5 over Hackett. Now, this was one where Benton actually jumped on Hackett. I think they put a 4 spot on him in the second inning. Hackett responded to that with a 4 spot of their own. I think that was, I'm going off of memory here, but I think that was in the 4th. Then Benton plates 2 late, and then I know Hackett answered with another. And I don't know if I'm not sure the exact story in this one, but I just know that Hackett came up a run short, 6-5. And for me, that was probably the game where I was like, okay, we knew Hackett could certainly is the best class probably in all of the small classifications. When you think of obviously their classification 2A and then 3A, which I think you could make a big argument for in the small class because they're obviously the defending 3A champions with a lot back. Those three classes, and maybe even in 4A, you could make an argument that they could compete for all of those state titles in all four of those classes. The biggest question was, could they compete with the upper echelon in 5 and 6A? They answered that, and at least in 5, because Benton right now, of course, coming into this week is our new number 1 team in Class 5A. But they proved that. I know that the Gravett game didn't go their way, of course, by that time. Here's my whole deal. I mainly judge teams based off of full 7-inning games with their top pitcher. They didn't have Mackenzie Freeman. Now, I'm not making any excuses, but they didn't have Mackenzie Freeman in that Gravett game, so I'm not really making any kind of judgment either way on that one. But I think that Hackett really did themselves a favor. Yes, they finished 1 and 2 on the weekend. Obviously, Benton did itself the most favors on the weekend, going 3-0. Farmington, what a weekend that they had. The Lady Cardinals, a very young Lady Cardinals team that is still trying to mesh. Jared, this one of the best games I saw last year was actually in the championship round of this tournament when they were playing Farmington's former coach Randy Osnes and Springdale Harbor. I think they were down 4 or 5 runs, something like that. Well, they ended up walking it off to close out the tournament and win that trophy. Again, it's a different format this year, so it was just the round robin, but it was the final game. Bentonville West got up on Farmington 7-0. That was in the third inning. I do remember that. Farmington starts kind of chipping away a little bit. Then they played 5 in the bottom of the 7th and then ended up walking it off. So 2 years in a row, Farmington walks off to end their tournament. What a finish that was, and what a vote of confidence that's going to take, especially last year. This was a Farmington team that knew they could really do some damage just because you had so many seniors, a very experienced team. Not that they don't believe that they can do some damage this season, but it definitely it's certainly natural to think that it would take some time, but they had a great showing at 2-1. Gravett, I still think, has some things to prove, but they, for the most part, took care of business. Their only loss was to Farmington in a 2-run game. And then, of course, Bentonville West went 1-2. Hackett, again, even though they went 1-2, I still think that they had a pretty good showing on the weekend. And then Lincoln did struggle to an 0-3 record. Of course, they, I don't know if you knew this, Jared, but they did not have their catcher this weekend. I know that she's going through some injuries and they're a little bit banged up. So spring break certainly couldn't come in quick enough for the Lady Wolves. But I certainly think you look at that top 3 with Benton, Farmington, and Gravett. You know, they leave the weekend with the winning records. But to me, Benton, Farmington, and Hackett, particularly Hackett shut out Bentonville West, a 3A or 2A over a 6A, shut them out 4-0. But I think Hackett really showed that they can compete with some of the state's best in that game against Benton in the nightcap on Friday.
Let me unmute there.
I'm about to say you pulled a me.
Yeah, well, I want to apologize real quick. Sorry, I've been muting my mic a lot too because I've got allergies and pollen stuff going on, and I'm coughing like crazy. So I'm trying to mute it every time that you're talking. So y'all just forgive me a little bit for all the leaning over to the side and coughing during the pod today. But a lot of people have asked me if Hackett was the best team in the state overall, and I always said, you know, they're really good, but it's hard to say because there's some really good teams in 5 and 6A that it'd be hard to say they were better than them, but they could compete with them. And watching them play Benton and watching them play, you know, Gravett and Bentonville West and seeing what they could do there, they proved that they can compete with the best teams in the state without a doubt. Whether or not they're the best team in the state, that's still, you know, to me, I think they're probably in the top 3 or 4 teams in the state overall, no matter what. And it's one of those you might not ever really be able to answer who's the best team in the state. I think Bentonville has an argument for that. I think Benton has an argument for that. You know, there's several teams that could be in that conversation. But without a doubt, Hackett got to see some really tough competition and probably did themselves a huge favor to get ready to make a state tournament run all the way through 2A. For me, the takeaway on this tournament was, man, look at how far Benton has come since last year.
Yeah.
Benton has they've got a lot of young players, and they have grown up already this season. Rexy Crane has just been mind-boggling to me, watching how well she's done in the circle. They're just
Lydia Bethards, man, she had a massive weekend. She was like, I think she batted close to 700. It was like 650, 700.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's what I was just about to say. There's 3 or 4 outstanding hitters in that group. Benton has really impressed me with what they've done so far this year. Farmington is always good. They've kind of had to, grow some young ones up this year after losing some good ones, but they're right back in the mix. And just like where they come back and won that game after being down 7-0 and won 8-7, they continue to just keep doing what Farmington does. That school, that team, it's just loaded with athletes year after year after year. So it'll be interesting to see what they do as they go forward. And getting to the Lincoln point, I've heard from several people that Lincoln definitely is really beat up. Got 4 or 5 kids with injuries that they're dealing with. Spring break couldn't have come at a better time, and I'll bet you we see a different Lincoln after they have a week or 10 days to get healthy and come back afterwards. I think you'll see them kind of springboard back into it and get after people.
No doubt. Yeah. And I'll go into more kind of detail on that once we get to the roundtable here in a second. But yeah, they played probably, other than Mayflower, the toughest conference or the toughest schedule in 3A. So that also has something to do with it. But we'll talk more about that as we get deeper into the conversation. Also, let's head to the DMAC tournament now. So for those that are not familiar with the DMAC tournament, and Jared, you might, if I say any of these facts or these statements wrong, definitely correct me. But I believe that this started in 2011, 2012, and it's after Debbie McMaster, I believe was her name. She passed away in the floods at Albert Pike in 2009, 2010. And so they started doing this tournament in her honor. It's a great event. Obviously, a lot of softball being played, but also scholarships are given out. And I think I saw 23 or 24 $500 ones. I don't want to say anything wrong, but I know that it was around 23 or 24 scholarships that were given out over the course of this weekend. So it's just a great thing to highlight kids with scholarships, also to, again, get some softball games in and to add a possible tournament championship to your resume for the season, because we know that those can certainly, once you get that taste of a tournament trophy, whether it's just a 2 or 3 game tournament or whatever the case may be, especially at the midway point in the season, that's a great motivating factor for a conference championship and ultimately a state championship. So that's one of the great things about these tournaments. And so always love following these. We'll start with the gold division. The Greenwood Lady Bulldogs took that one. Their path, and I'll read out all the scores for those that might be listening on the audio version or not watching, but their path, they beat Arkansas High 6-1 in the first round. Then Monticello, they edged the Lady Billies 2-1 in the semifinals, then took down top-ranked 3A top-ranked DeWitt Dragonettes 8-4 in the championship round. I went ahead and highlighted Emily Creason, Daisy Parker, and Piper Pitts just because I know that they all had multiple hits in the championship round. A big day hitting for the Lady Bulldogs against a really good DeWitt team. I don't care if it was a 5A against a 3A. I mean, this is 2 of the state's top teams in their respective classes. And Jared, Greenwood's had, and I know I know a lot of the names and things like that. I know you've kind of followed this team a little bit, maybe more than I have on a game-by-game basis, but seems to me like Coach Hart has, just from the conversations that you and I had, maybe he's toyed with the lineup a little bit, and he might have really at a great point in the season as we get back from spring break. And of course, they're trying to make those conference runs. This might be the lineup that he's got, or at least he's gotten some things figured out on how he wants to go about in that batting lineup in particular.
Yeah, I would definitely talk a little bit about what they've done defensively. After talking to him, I actually talked to Coach Hart today for probably 20 minutes on the phone, talked a little bit about what had went right, what had went wrong, and what had changed, because they'd lost a couple games early and now they've won 5 or 6 straight. Seem to be really kind of finding their groove and rolling. And he said, they've kind of played with the lineups a little bit, kind of bounced people up and down to find where they need to be in the lineup. He's moved some people around a little bit defensively, made a couple changes to help strengthen the defensive side. He said, it's not really any one big change here or there. It's just lots of little things, just trying to find where they play well together. You got B. Rothkar that's short, and she's just killing the ball while she's hitting. Riley Floyd's doing well and hitting the ball well. You got Emily Creason catching, and I'm gonna tell you, and she's flipped back and forth from catcher to the outfield this year. But when she's catching, that kid's just
good. Yeah,
she is a wall. I've watched her several times in tournament ball. She's just a wall. She doesn't let the ball get by her, and she has a cannon for an arm. She will light you up at second base in a blink of an eye. And she just does a great job behind the plate, and she's hitting the ball really well. She's hitting around 300 and just, smashing line drives. That's just what she does. I tried to follow a little bit for this tournament, and I got a little bit of, inside info. Arkansas High actually played with them really well early in the game, and then just kind of ran out of steam, and Greenwood pulled away. The Monticello game was a dogfight. I think got down, to basically timely hitting, and then the same thing with DeWitt. It was another dogfight, and Greenwood has just kind of managed to be able to put together some timely hits, and then their pitching has just been solid. They're not overpowering people, but they've been solid, and they're getting the job done. Alyssa Lovell has done really well, and then their other pitcher, I think, is Michaela Backert. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. Those two, that was kind of their question mark coming into the season, is where they're going to have the pitching to be able to compete with the better teams in 5A. And right now, those two have really stepped up and done their job in the circle. So Greenwood is looking really strong at this point in the season. They get a little bit of rest here, I think, for 4 or 5 days, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit for them to make a really strong push and not lose very many games the rest of the season.
Yeah, that 5A West is going to be really interesting because last year, Mountain Home, we didn't talk about them a whole lot, and they ended up upsetting Arkansas High in the first round of the state tournament. Of course, Greenwood, I think if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember if they lost to Valley, but they had that really, really close, or that back and forth game with Valley View. And of course, too, now you add Farmington into that mix, the defending 4A champion. And then you've also got a scrappy Van Buren team that's going to be really those four, to me, are going to be fighting it out for those 4 playoff seeds out of the West. But also out of the West, you've got a Alma team that won the silver division. Now, of course, I don't know that they got pushed. The Airedales, I mean, I'll say it, they may not have gotten pushed to the extent that the Lady Bulldogs of Greenwood did, but still nonetheless took care of business in their round, in their bracket, beating Foreman 7-3 in the first round, Bismarck 7-2 in the semifinal round, and then Bradley out of Class 1A 2-0 in the final round. Freshman Harper Jernigan, really big game against Bradley in the final round, final round, championship round, whatever you want to call it. 7 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 walk, and then 8 strikeouts. So this is one of my tasks for spring break. And Jared, I've kind of sent you a list of the teams that I'm looking at talking to kind of figure out more things about. I do want to figure out a little bit more about Alma because they have struggled in recent years, but this is year 2 under Coach Backenhaus. And I'll say this, I think that he's, along with Harper Jernigan, I do think that they have, a little bit of young talent mixed in there. So who knows, maybe they could be one of those sleepers in the 5A West. That would probably be the next one that I would point to, other than the ones that I'd also Russellville. We'll see what they can do on the back end. Russellville, to me, before the season, was maybe in there with Van Buren that would fight for that 4th and final spot in the 5A West. But I think probably you point to Russellville and Alma being those next teams up that are going to challenge the 4 that I just mentioned. But nonetheless, as I talked about, especially if you're a freshman like Harper Jernigan is, to have a game like that, especially in a championship round, again, you're obviously going to see tougher competition in your conference play. And then if you make it to the state tournament, but that is extremely important, especially for a young pitcher like this, to get a trophy. And as I said a second ago, taste a little bit of success and see what it is like to earn a trophy that could eventually maybe end up resulting in more.
I will I can't speak a ton about Alma because that's one that me and you both talked about. We've got to go get some extra information on them. Obviously, they won their division. I can speak a little bit about their opponents, and that'll speak a little bit to Alma. I can tell you that they beat Foreman 7-3, and that's a really outstanding pitcher at Foreman, Mallory Abercrombie. She's already over 100 strikeouts for this season, throwing the ball really well. She has a little bit of a unorthodox style. She kind of has that high leg kick and gets her leg out front and hides the ball really well. And she throws really hard. She's around 60, 61, maybe a little higher than that. I'm not sure. But the last time I actually saw her in person, she's a really good hitter too. I think she dropped a couple bombs, in the last 2 or 3 games. But Mallory's a phenomenal athlete, pitcher, and hitter at Foreman. So Alma, got a quality win there against quality pitching. Bismarck has got a couple of really good ball players in their lineup, and a couple of decent little pitchers that have really come along, and it's been a big part of their success this year. So they saw some decent pitching there. And then Bradley is always tough. No matter what's going on, they're just a scrappy bunch. And they've won several games over the last couple of weeks that we've been talking about. So, Alma didn't have an easy path here on this one. So I would say just by looking at who they beat and the pitching that they saw, I would say that Alma has really started to put their name on the docket for people to start paying attention to them. And I'm going to try to do a little research over the next week so that when we talk again, we can talk about their players a little more and name a few of them.
And last but not least, the third and final division of the DMAC tournament, Mount Vernon-Enola. Congratulations to Jason Job and his crew. Won the blue division, beat Hope 6-2, Derek's, however you prefer to pronounce it, 10-3 in the semifinal round, and then had a slugfest with the Prescott Lady Curly Wolves, 13-11 in the final. I just went ahead again and named because there were multiple kids. I think, Jared, Mount Vernon-Enola, I want to say they had 13 or 14 hits in this game. Now, I didn't check Prescott's. Imagine they did too, obviously, with 11 runs. But Holly Kirkpatrick, Alyssa Gilbert, and Brenya Winston all went 3 for 3 for the Lady Warhawks in the final round. And then Ashlyn Olive and Ashlyn Nass finished 2 for 2. So some big days individually for multiple Lady Warhawks. And this was big for the Lady Warhawks, Jared, in particular, because this is another team that is really trying to recover from some key pieces lost in the 2024 class. You think about Jenna Job and also Allie Mendoza. I mean, that's a catcher, Jenna, and a shortstop, Allie, that were 2 of the best at their position. And I don't know, you knew those kids really well. I think you played multiple times against them in travel ball, if I'm not mistaken. But they were 2 at the best at their position, regardless of classification. And I think many would say that. So just those 2 in particular out of that 24 class, this is something that the Lady Warhawks are really having to learn to play without. And I think that I know they've taken some lumps along the way, but again, this could be really where they maybe turn the corner and be like, okay, we just won a championship and we won our first trophy of the year. We want to try to win more. And that could maybe set the tone for a strong second half run. And I wouldn't count Jason Job team out.
Well, they definitely lost a ton of talent. Allie Mendoza was an unbelievable talent at shortstop or anywhere you wanted to put her, with a big bat. Jenna Job has all kinds of skills behind the plate, and then she could just crush a softball. Even when you threw a ball in the other box, sometimes she could reach over in the other box and yank it over the fence. So we learned that the hard way in regionals in high school ball 2 years ago. We threw one, over on the stripe in the other box, and she still reached across and slapped it over the fence. So pretty impressive as a hitter. And another one, if I'm not mistaken, that was a really quality player that they lost there to graduation was Ashley Sprague. Was it Ashley Sprague?
Yeah, I think she was an outfielder. Yeah, if I remember correctly.
Really good little outfielder, slapper, one of the toughest outs there is at the plate. I know for us, we had to work and work and work to try to get get out, and it seemed like we could never get her out. She'd find somewhere to poke the ball and get a base hit. So they definitely lost a lot. And I actually reached out on Friday, or actually Thursday, to try to get a little information on this team because I knew they were going to the DMAC. And I reached out to Coach Job, and he gave me a call back. We got to talk for about 5 minutes. He said, "Hey, we'll catch up after tonight's games," because we were about to play in high school. They were about to play their first game, I think, in the DMAC. And he said, "We'll get back in touch tonight. We'll talk more. I'll give you some more information." Well, we both got busy with ball games and we didn't get to talk anymore. But I know, looking at who they beat there, I'm not familiar with what Hope's got now, but Hope's always been one of those salty teams that just finds ways to win. And then I know Derek's has a really quality little pitcher. I believe her name's Kristen Eisenhower.
Yes.
Everybody calls her Sis. That's how I know her as Sis. But I think her name's Kristen Eisenhower, if I'm saying that correctly. It's been Sis for as long as I've known her. She doesn't blow you away with speed, but she's got some of the best spin in the game. She's a hard-working little kid, and she finds ways to get out. She'll pop you up. She'll have you hitting weak ground balls. She'll strike you out when you're not paying attention. She's just a really salty little gritty player. And for them to get over on Dirks with her pitching, I know they had to play some ball there. And I'm not real familiar with Prescott this year. And so I don't know what they saw as far as pitching and things like that. But Mount Vernon-Enola has been really good historically for 3, 4, 5 years now. And it looks like he's got them right back on the path to being a really good team again.
Yeah, no question. And again, big shout out to everybody that hosted tournaments this weekend. It seemed like the weather really cooperated. I know Friday it was still, of course, last week. Jared, you being a firefighter, you got to deal with all the self-induced idiot stuff that went on with fires and all kinds of stuff. With last Wednesday was probably the most unique day weather-wise that I've ever encountered in my 35 years on this planet. I don't know that I can recall a day of wind that was quite like that. But yeah, everybody did a phenomenal job. The Ozarks Classic went well. This DMAC tournament, everything. Of course, Saturday we had some pretty gorgeous weather across the state. Here, as we're recording on a Sunday night, even though it was a little cloudy today, I got a really good walk in. It's great to see. Well, of course, the sun came out this afternoon, but great to see the sun and great to see low to mid 70s. It is amazing to see that again, as opposed to the frigid conditions that we've had during the first couple of months of 2025. I do want to mention real quick, I don't know if there were any other round robin tournaments or anything that we missed. I did get wind right before, about 30 minutes before we started recording. Yellville Summit did beat Green Forest 10-0 in the Big Cat Classic up in North Central Arkansas over the weekend. I believe that was in North Central Arkansas. But Trinity Story threw a perfect game, struck out 8 in the championship round against Green Forest. Also went 3 for 4 at the plate with 2 doubles and 4 RBI. Grace Clifford, Hannah Hayward, and Grayson Dearmore also collected multiple hits on the huge day for the Lady Panthers. So that was what we got as far as tournaments. That's the information that we got. I apologize if we missed one. I did put a post out. And so again, if we missed one, I hate that, but we can only do what we can do. Now, Jared, we will go to our round robin tournament around. What am I talking? I'm talking about tournaments, and I'm saying our round robin tournament, our roundtable discussion. This is just going to be a quick little thing that Jared and I discuss some things that we have taken away from the first half of the season. I'll just go ahead and go with my 4 through 6A, and then I'll let you elaborate on that, say anything that you want to add to it. And then we'll go 1A to 3A, and then we'll wrap things up here. But in 6A, really, and we've said this multiple times throughout the past few years. Right now, it's Bentonville and everybody else. Of course, Bryant, even though Bryant was obviously very, very good in 2023, considering the team that Bentonville had at that time. 8 or 9 college signees? I mean, there were girls on that team that didn't even play a ton of innings for Bentonville that still signed with a Division I or Division II college. So that was an upset when Brian upset them and then ultimately went on to beat Cabot to win the 6A championship. But last year, Coach Early, we've probably everybody listening has heard the story by now, reloaded with he had Amber Turner, now outfielder, now playing at Tulsa, and he had Ryan Sanders, his ace pitcher that's now playing at Louisville, and the rest were all freshmen and sophomores. Those freshmen and sophomores, Violet Nguyen, well, I think Violet actually, I can't remember if she's a sophomore, but either way, she's an underclassman. Kylie Wyman, who else? Aniston Wright's a senior. I can't think of a whole lot of them off the top of my head right now without looking at it. But just to name those few, they have now grown up. And now Alexis Lorenage is another one behind the dish that really came on as a catcher last year. Now that these girls have grown up the way that they have, to me, it's just Bentonville and everybody else. I still like Rogers Heritage. I still like I still like Springdale Harbor. I still like Rogers. And man, I'm mixing all kinds of stuff up here. Bryant recently got a really big win over Cabot, and the Bryant Lady Hornets are undefeated. So right now they seem to be the favorite in the Central Conference. So I still like what a lot of teams have in 6A right now, but to me it's Bentonville and everybody else. Then I was about to say Benton for Bryant a second ago. That was where I got tongue-tied, those Saline County rivals. Benton seems to have separated a little bit in Class 5A. GCT is a team that I'm really curious about this week. They go back to the Gulf Shores tournament. Of course, they just got Sophia Gonzalez and Wesleyan Burnside back from playing basketball on their way to a state championship where they lost to Farmington in the final round. So they just now got those girls back a couple of weeks ago, 2 key pieces. So I think GCT can make some really big noise if they can go and show some things in the Gulf Shores tournament, but still expect a lot out of the Lady Eagles this year. And then in Class 4A, Jared, this one to me is maybe about as wide open. This in 2A, even though 2A has really come on with some extremely talented teams, particularly in the top 7, I think 4A is about as wide open as any team right now. You've obviously got our Super 7 and the teams that we talk about in Region 1 or in Conference 1, like Pea Ridge and Gentry. Also, too, even though Prairie Grove had a crazy finish with Fayetteville last week when they lost 33-29, I still think that the Lady Tigers are one to watch in that, maybe to sneak in behind maybe a Gentry or a Pea Ridge. Also in Region 3, Conference 3, Gosnell, interested to see what they have. Conference 4, Mena and Pottsville, even maybe Dardanelle on their best day mixed in. And the Conference 5 South, always like Malvern. I think that they've got something to prove here in the back half of the season with a lot of freshmen that they're playing. Conference 7, you also always have to put Nashville in the mix. I really like what DeQueen has to offer. They played a little bit of a light schedule right now. They are undefeated, but very experienced arm in Perry Nickerson. And then Conference 8 down there in the southeastern part of the state is really interesting. Obviously, you've got Monticello that is the favorite right now as they're coming out of last season as the conference champion. Warren has done some really good things. They've got a win over Woodlawn. Crossett is 8-2, but really just hasn't played anybody up to the standards that they will be playing. So I want to see a little bit more from the Lady Eagles. But to me, I think that 4A could be about as wide open as any league. Last year, our audience heard us say over and over and over again how we think that the state champion will come from Conference 1. That ended up happening. 3 of the 4 semifinalists were from that conference. This year, yes, again, I still like Pea Ridge and Gentry probably as the favorites right now, but to me, it's about as wide open as any class in the state. You're muted.
I won't get too crazy with a lot of other wild hairs there. I think you're hitting it pretty close on the head with most of what you just said. Definitely Bentonville looks extremely tough. Behind them, and I say behind them because I feel like they're kind of the team that looks like they're out front. But Rogers, for sure, Harbor, Bryant and Cabot are kind of my only other ones right now that I feel like are going to have a chance to really compete for those top, 1 or 2 to 3 spots. Going in 5A, I think Benton's really starting to separate themselves, but Sheridan still looks really tough. Greenwood is impressing me more and more the more I see out of them, and I think they're really starting to gel, and they're a team that can really, I think, make a run because they're just deep, across the board. 4A, I'm still very strong on Pea Ridge. Gentry's a really good team. You mentioned Monticello. I think a big thing with Monticello will be if they get some of their injured kids back. Monticello is a really strong team, but they're missing some kids due to big injuries, and there's a chance that they may get. I think they're missing 3 pretty strong players.
I think they're getting 2 back after spring break.
That's what I was going to say. I think they get at least 2 of the 3 of those players back, so you may see a little more out of them. A couple teams that I really want to watch and see what they do because I feel like they are better than what they've performed so far, and I think it's kind of young players and they're trying to get to that point where the team gels. I really like some of the things I've seen out of Star City, and I really like some of the things I've seen out of Brooklyn. I think we may see some strong runs out of those 2 teams as they go through the rest of the season after spring break. And I'll tell you, you mentioned Mena and Pottsville. They're both really solid teams. And Mena, if I'm not mistaken, just beat Pottsville right before spring break. 3-2. And Abby Copine just pitched out of her mind. That kid is she continues to just impress. And Mena's got several weapons. I think Lily Rowland, she hit a walk-off in that game to finish that game out, and she's done a great job at the plate for Mena. Several other quality little players on that team, and Mena's kind of pieced together. At first I kind of always called them my dark horse. They always seem to beat a few people they're not supposed to, but they can't ever seem to put their name in that mix. But man, they've strung together quite a few wins here so far in the season, and they've beat 2 or 3 quality teams now. So you can't ever write them off. So for 4 through 6A, there's going to be a lot more to talk about, but those are kind of rounding them up. I'd say those are teams you need to watch for. Malvern is always strong, and they with the talent that they have, it wouldn't surprise me for them to make a push here too.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you pointed out Star City. Of course, they're still in the Super 7. I really like what they have. I think they're 4-5 or around 500, maybe just a little bit under, but I love what they have. But I'm also, I'll say it. I mean, it's late March, but so maybe we'll pull the tapes and I'm completely wrong. But I think that if any team makes a run out of the East, it's going to be Brooklyn. Brooklyn they've got that young talent that we talked about. But Jared, Matt Dillon, I mean, he's a great ball coach. I mean, he is a great coach, and I think sometimes that's forgotten. What he did at Tuckerman, that back-to-back state title run, this guy, I mean, he gets the most out of his players. He's just a really freaking good coach, and especially when you have that, and you have the talent that they do have, albeit a good bit of it young, as we talked about. Curry's she's playing really well for the U15 team. They had 2 dominant wins over Brazil, and I think she actually hit the walk-off double in the 11-0 win over Brazil, and then she hit a home run. Pretty sure as a pinch hitter in the 22-0 win over Argentina on Sunday. So get a bat like that back. Also, I've heard a lot. I mean, I've heard even more people raving about her defense. You think about Kennedy Brooks. What's the pitcher's name? It starts. I'm gonna just call her H because I don't want to butcher her last name. But I think that you got her in the circle. They're going to be fine. This team is, I'll be honest with you. There was 1 or 2 that text me over that were like, man, like, what are we like? We're playing Bentonville. I said, look, and that's kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Nobody's going to get this kind of look other than maybe a Gentry and some other team in 4A. No other team other than Gentry is going to get this kind of look, or any other team that might be playing Bentonville that I may be missing out of the northwest part of Arkansas. This is going to be a really good team, and I wholeheartedly believe that. We had them preseason ranked at number 6 because we believe that probably at the beginning of the season they're in the back half, and right now they are. But any team could be in the back half right now. I really think that once you get past, Bauxite has been a little bit up and down too, but I still think they're a top 3 team at their best. But yeah, 4A is just really tough to decipher. And then going to 3A, and I'll give my 1 through 3A and then let you elaborate on that. But 3A, I think this is just a bunch of the top teams playing top tier competition. DeWitt, as we talked about, lost to Greenwood. Mayflower is 500, but to me has played the toughest schedule in 3A. Lincoln probably right behind the Lady Eagles as far as the toughest strength of schedule. I would say Lincoln's probably second behind them. They've got some things to figure out. The Lady Wolves do. They had a really tough run in Farmington. Last year they beat Prairie Grove. They went 1-2 or 1-2 or 2-2 or something in that tournament. I can't remember exactly what it was. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, it was a different structure. But after that tournament, Lincoln they won 18 of their final 23 games and ended up going to the state championship. So they're going to be just fine. I think as long as they stay healthy, they'll get rested this week and they'll be back on a roll. Jared, 2A might be what 3A normally is, at least, and 3A might turn out this way again. But to me, 2A is extremely deep with, a lot of really impressive teams. I don't know that we've seen a lot of impressive stuff like across the board from the 1 through 7 teams in 3A, but I feel like we've seen that for the most part in Class 2A because we already know what Hackett can do, what Woodlawn, Desart, Quitman at their best, what they can do, at their healthiest, what they can do. But then you also think, and I know Riverside is off to a little bit of a rough start. That 5-4, I think, is what they are coming into spring break. But Jared, this is the most successful senior class in Class 2A. One of the more, actually, maybe this is the most, other than Taylor, the most successful class probably in all of Arkansas high school softball. When you think of winning a state championship as sophomores, going back as juniors, and then also making a state tournament run as freshmen. I'm not ready to give up on this Riverside team just yet. They're off to a slow start, but they've proven enough to me with this senior class in particular that they can get things turned around. And then you also look at Carlisle in that mix as well at number 7. In most cases, Carlisle's probably a top 5 team. And you know what? Maybe they are. We'll figure that out as we get down the stretch here. But I will say this much. It's not just those top 7 teams, and you and I have kind of touched on it on previous shows. I'm interested to see what Izard County can do. I know that a lot of the girls that were on that state championship basketball team, or some of them, are going to be playing softball. So once they mesh together, how will that turn out? Bigelow's been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde, but Bigelow's a really tough team. Horatio, you know a little bit. You're in the same conference as Horatio. You know a little bit more about them, but I know that you're high on them. There's just so many teams that I think you could point to, even outside of the top 7, that 2A probably from top to bottom has impressed me the most thus far. I'll go ahead. I said a lot there for 2 and 3A. I'll let you talk about that, and then we'll finish out with 1A.
Well, I'll briefly touch on 3A. I've been very impressed with Mayflower for sure. The schedule that they've played is insane. I mean, they're definitely playing the top competition in the state, trying to get ready to be able to compete and win a state championship in 3A. Just continue to be blown away with what they do. As far as that, you mentioned Lincoln. I think Lincoln's going to continue to be a really good top team in 3A. I think it's going to be a matter of them getting healthy. They've got 2 or 3 players that are really banged up and beat up, but I think having a little time here at spring break is going to be the right time for them to heal and make a run down the stretch. I pretty well agree with most everything else you said on 3A. 2A, you're right. There's just a ton of quality teams. You look across the board. You got Hackett. You've got, Woodlawn. You've got Quitman. You got Desart. You got Carlisle. Horatio is a really good team in our conference. Foreman is becoming more and more of a factor. Seeing them, and they've got a really good pitcher there in Mallory Abercrombie. There's just so many teams there. Honestly, I think there's 3 or 4 that are in that conversation for the state championship, and then you've got 8 to 10 that are right behind them. Obviously Riverside is going to be right there in that conversation. The theme that I continue to see, though, out of that 2A group, and if you look at how many of the state's top overall pitchers are in that 2A group. When you back up and look at the pitching talent in 2A, it is insane. There's great pitchers all over the state, but collectively, I don't know that there's a better group of pitchers in any classification than there is in 2A. I mean, you got Lily Faye, you've got Claire Womack, you've got Kaylee McDonald, just everywhere you look. And honestly, Lacey Rawls, the number 2 at Woodlawn, is in that conversation to be one of the better pitchers in the state of Arkansas. And she's done it as a number 2 at her school. Just everywhere you look, there's another great pitcher in 2A. If you look at pitchers who have put up insane strikeout numbers in the state of Arkansas, 2A is loaded up. I mean, there's in the top 10 pitchers in 2A, there's probably close to 5,000 career strikeouts. I mean, it's crazy. And there's a lot of teams that are just right out of the edge of that conversation that have really good individual pitchers too. So the 2025 class, I've heard over and over and over, was probably the best recruiting class to ever come through the state of Arkansas, especially because of the pitching talent. Well, a huge part of that pitching talent is piled up in 2A in Arkansas.
That's true.
So definitely a lot of talent there. And then, I'll start you over into 1A, and then I'll let you come back with 1A.
Let's do it.
You look at that, and you have some really quality teams that start with their pitching. You got Taylor and Ayla Buford. She's got great teammates around her and good defense and good bats, but she's a really strong 25 pitcher. Then you look at Scranton, and Scranton is a really good quality team. It's got good defense. They've got some really good pitching. Delaney Maynard is one of the best pitchers in the state, and she's proven that for 2 or 3 years now. And just lately, I've noticed her little sister Brecken has gotten to pitch a couple of games, and she's put up like 17 and 18 strikeouts in the 2 games she's pitched. So they're really deep at pitching. We know Westside is going to be really good in 1A. It's taken them a little bit because they ran so deep in the state tournament and won a state championship in basketball. They're gonna turn out to be pretty good. But now we're kind of starting to see a couple of others, Concord and Viola and some others that are starting to separate themselves just a little bit in 1A, so that we can kind of tell who else is going to be in that conversation besides those first 3. So definitely going to be fun to watch as we go down the stretch for all these.
Yeah, no doubt. I did miss Tuckerman in that 2A. I knew that I was missing one team that's done really well. And Tuckerman, they're at double-digit wins already, so they've had a really solid campaign as well up to this point. But yeah, 1A, kind of what I have in my notes here is, look, as I don't know how many times we've said this over the past few years, but Taylor is the queens of 1A and is the queen of 1A until somebody else proves different. They're the 7-time defending champions. But if you just now, I haven't seen them play a lot, but based on the box scores, and the box score doesn't always tell the full story. Let me make sure I point that out. This team has heavily relied on Ayla a lot, and that's not expected. I mean, we got a feeling that a lot would be on her shoulders just because she is the senior leader. In my opinion, she's the best player in Class 1A, one of the better ones, of course, in the state and the smaller classifications, however you want to put it. But I think that's probably where Taylor's going as they continue. And look, that was another team that made another really deep run in basketball. You bring Adley Buford in as a freshman. She hit her first home run over the weekend. They played, was it Drew Central, and then Morris, Illinois. That's that that Illinois school that they usually play right before spring break every year. They did a round robin down there in South Arkansas. But you bring her, of course, Michaela Downs, I know was a part of that basketball team. This is going to be another really great Taylor squad. And I think that you're going to see players as they continue to get more games under their belt, more and more are going to step up. But Jared, what I loved from Courtney, and I don't even think I mentioned this on the preview pod or last week, but Courtney McHenry, whereas a lot of coaches, when I talked to them before the season, and you lose what Taylor lost. Now, again, this is not the first time that they've lost a big senior class and gone on to win state championships. I mean, you're going to lose multiple senior classes when you win 7 in a row. But not one time did I sense anything but confidence from her. She wasn't saying, yeah, we're going to have to put a lot of stuff on Ayla, and then we'll see what happens. She was confident in this entire team. Yeah, we got Ayla back. That's great to have her back for her senior year. And I'm just paraphrasing, but we've also got this girl that's played plenty of innings, this girl that's played plenty of innings. It was all confidence. And that's what championship teams have, is coaches like that. And so I think that's, again, not just because they've proven to win it every year for the past 7 years. This is a team that has I can't stress enough, a winning mentality. Like, it's ingrained in them at this point. This senior class, they were like 11, 12 years old when Taylor won the first state championship of the 7. So they've grown up as elementary kids, as junior high kids, as high school kids, and they have seen this year in and year out. That being said, I still think there is a lot of strong competition when you look at now Scranton. They'll play some tougher teams down the stretch. They've handled their business through. I think they're 6-0 on the year. West Side, now Concord. I think probably Concord was the one that we underrated a little bit, Jared, because yes, they did lose Caitlin Cornett, they did lose Ashlyn Cossey, they did lose Whitney Goodson, but they still have Lakin Cornett, they still got Lily Tharp, they've still got Lexi Cannon, they've still got Kendall Devers. That's something too that, like, if all those girls that, or if the ones that had gone to West Side were at Concord would probably be the number 1, number 2 team in the state right now. I mean, they'd be up there in that top 2, but they're still a very quality. I know they had a rough go at the DMAC, but again, against quality and upper competition there. So I would say that 1A2 conference, even though Shirley has dropped off, it's still going to be really competitive because West Side, as you said, West Side's going to figure it out. These girls are going to figure it out. They committed 5 or 6 errors against Concord, and their first game literally 48 hours after winning a 1A state championship. So I do think that, yes, again, it's going to be Scranton, Taylor, and West Side in that mix, with a little bit of respect to Concord, maybe as the dark horse as well. But that 1A2 conference, when you think about Calico Rock also in that mix, West Side, basically everybody, because Norfolk has moved out of that conference. I think it's just 5 teams now. So 4 of those 5 teams, Viola also is undefeated, but is going to be playing some tougher competition as we go down the stretch here, especially in conference play. I mean, this is going to be a league in the 1A2 again that really isn't going to drop off a whole lot like we may have thought it was going to before the season.
I'm going to tell you, I did not think that 1A was going to be very deep this year. I thought it was going to be a 3 to 5 team race and not a lot else. But now that we're seeing a little bit out of these other teams, I think it may be. I think those 3 are going to be really good and going to be kind of the very top. But man, instead of there just being 1 or 2 behind them, now it is looking like there's maybe 5 or 6 behind them that can play with everyone else. Definitely, I've been impressed with what Concord has done so far, knowing what they've lost. They've made it a point, it looks like, to go play some quality competition early in this year, and that's going to definitely benefit them. We talk about strength of schedule all the time, and we beat it up probably sometimes maybe even a little too much, but they definitely have done a job of scheduling some quality competition early to help make them better down the stretch.
So I want to remind everybody, you can check out our weekly, of course, you can subscribe to the show and catch our weekly episodes that will drop every Monday. You can also look at our Super 7 rankings for Class 1A through 6A on fearlessfriday.com. It'll be one of the top stories every week. And also, if you just go to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like the Fearless forums, but you should be able to see it each week. The Super 7 softball and baseball rankings, of course, we'll also have them on our Twitter Twitter and Facebook pages on the Natural State Sports Network as well. Want to thank our sponsors again, Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, Boom Boom Floor Shine, and Chinook Cedary. And Jared, I'm trying to I know you're definitely ready for a break. What did y'all play last week? 4 games or 5?
Yeah, we played 4, and we definitely kind of wore ourselves down to a nub, almost quite literally. But I'll tell you, it was a long week, and it was definitely a good spot to get Jaylee some rest. She threw a lot this week. We had a lot of our girls that they played hard, and we won 3 out of 4. We laid an egg against Lake Hamilton Friday, playing in a 5A school. And real quick, I'll mention Michaela Miller for Lake Hamilton has got to be one of the most athletic best ball players in the state. And I know Lake Hamilton's probably not going to get talked about a lot in 5A because they're down a little bit and they're a little short on pitching. And a shout out to Aspen Austin and a couple of those other girls that have stepped up as pitchers that aren't normally pitchers to throw for them. But those 2 girls at Lake Hamilton are really special athletes. Aspen Austin and Michaela Miller. Michaela Miller, last week we were talking about some of the fastest players in the state being in 5A, and she's in that same conference with Skylar Sterrett, and we were talking about Anaya Arnold down at Arkansas High. Michaela Miller is actually literally one of the fastest players in the state. She's won, I don't know how many either won state titles or come in second in hurdles, and just crazy speed, big arm. That was one of the things that impressed me the most when we played on Friday, is she just didn't seem to make mistakes at shortstop, and she had a cannon arm even from deep in the hole at short. She was throwing the ball across the infield, looked like a major leaguer, and she's got a great bat. And if you make a mistake against her, she'll make you pay. We found out the hard way. She hit one about 30 feet over the fence. Jaylee gave up her first home run of the year to that one. But definitely, and a couple other players that I know their teams aren't necessarily just killing it, but I know that they're doing a great job this year. Down at Gurdon, Michaela Bradshaw is hitting the cover off the ball. Sadie Griffin doing really well. She's doing decent at pitching job, but she's hitting the ball really well and got several home runs. Molly Cox on that team. There's a collection of 3 really good players on that team that are doing well, and just continue to impress me as individual players. And I think that team's going to start putting a little bit back together after spring break with that kind of talent. They're going to have to do something a little better than what they've done so far. But a few of those players that we don't always get a chance to talk about a lot, but they're really impressive individually.
Yeah, we'll try next week when we don't have near as much to talk about. Of course, we'll recap some of the stuff that the tournaments from spring break. I know Harding Academy on Monday night is going to be playing Orange Beach. So they're going to, I was talking with Will Francis, and I was confirming their record, and because I don't think they're on Game Changer. And I was like, y'all are 6-3, whatever. He's like, yeah, but that might change for the worse this week. And I looked at their schedule. I'm like, holy crap, I knew they were going to play in Gulf Shores, but they're playing Orange Beach, Jared. Orange Beach is top 15 consensus, nationally ranked. They've got Ava, which I had Ava Hodo on this show a couple of weeks ago, or about a month and a half ago, 2026 Razorback commit. She played with Lily Faye McWhorter with the Bolts in travel ball. I think actually she might have played with Kaylee McDonald some too from Desark, but they're loaded. They got 2 Razorback commit. They're a 4-time defending state champion. So Harding Academy is going to have their hands full, but credit to them for, they've got, I know, there's another one that's I know they're ranked in Alabama, but I can't remember the name of it, but they got 4 games that they're playing. Like I said, GCT's playing in the Gulf Shores tournament. I think Fayetteville is. So we'll recap all that, along with talk about some of our outlooks for the second half of the season, and also try to do some player features as well. We'll see what we can do for that show next week. I'm actually, speaking of Desark, Hernando, Mississippi, undefeated Hernando, Mississippi, and nationally ranked, top 20 nationally ranked, is coming to Desark. So they have Macy Deaver Boaz, who is another player for 2026 committed to the Razorbacks. Her and Kaylee McDonald actually played together in travel ball. So there's that connection there. Carrie Deaver Boaz, who's a good friend of mine. She actually was the first ever Razorback coach for the softball team. Started the Razorback softball program there. I'm going to have I had her and Macy on as well about 2 months ago. Going to have Coach Deaver Boaz on at some point to talk about that, building that program from the ground up. She was some pretty crazy stories. I remember one, Jared, that she had told me about. It was something like she had a pitcher that threw mid-60s. Now, keep in mind, this is like the early to mid to late 90s. Nobody in Arkansas threw 65 at that time, like nobody. So she didn't have anybody who could catch her. So some really interesting stories there. But yeah, that's where I will be on Saturday or Friday or Saturday. I can't remember what day that game is. And so I'll be there at Desark to catch Desark and Hernando, Mississippi. But Jared, unless you got something else, go y'all relax this week and get ready for the second half of the season. But if you got anything else for closing remarks, we'll wrap this baby up.
I think we're just going to try to take this week and get healthy in our camp and get ready for the second half of the season. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of these teams separate themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this is when it's really going to start counting. Not that it didn't count before, but this is when the race to get your top spots, your top seeds for state tournament play. Of course, before that, you got to get your districts and your regionals and all that if you're a 1 through 4A team, and then we'll worry about state after that. But for real, everybody that's not playing this week, definitely get your rest. Enjoy. I know that Jared and I know that, like Jared said, we harp on strength of schedule a lot. We harp on a lot of hard work. That's obviously what athletics are about, but we want you to have fun too. We want you to be kids. We want you to go out, relax, have some fun, safe fun with your friends. But yeah, we hope this week is re-energizing for everybody, including parents and coaches. And then we can hit the final stretch here, not just for the spring sports season, but also for the school year. So it's crazy that that's almost at an end, but that'll do it for episode 63 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. Again, subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen. We are there. Other than that, we will catch you on the baseball episode and as far on this week. And then for softball, we will catch you next Monday. Take care.